200 years. Mammon has been podcasting with my family for over 200 years.
Welcome back to another episode of Spawnography. One of your hosts, Pierce Lyden, pronouns they, them. Here with, as always,
George Marston, pronouns they, them, or she, her.
Here we are. We're back. We haven't recorded in a minute. It's been a few weeks.
Yeah, it has. And, you know, there's been some big changes, and that's part of why I personally, if you've been a listener for even a couple of episodes, you've almost certainly heard me discuss my work with Newsarama and its associated sites and how my personal opinion doesn't reflect theirs. Well, now my personal opinion doesn't reflect anybody's opinion but my own, because I am no longer writing for those sites after 17 years. So it's a pretty big adjustment. It is not a choice I made. Let's put it that way. So, you know, in the reality of the world we live in, that is kind of what happens. And yeah. If anybody knows someone who needs a critic and media writer and comic subject matter expert with almost 20 years of experience writing at, top level sites, then just
hit us up.
Hit us up, because I'm here. In the meantime, though, we're getting back to Spawnography, which I'm very excited about because it's been a little while. You know, I had to do some adjusting and take care of some things. And so we're back recording now. Pierce, how the hell has your week been?
Pretty good. I just got back just got back. I mean, it was last week, was the Boston Marathon.
Boston.
Yeah, that also contributed to our little layoff in recording.
That's true. How did you win?
I did not win.
Oh, well.
But it was a lot of fun. It was my 8th marathon ever. My first time doing Boston.
Oh, nice. I used to go to the Boston Marathon every year because, of course, my family is from Massachusetts, and it would come past my aunt's place all the time, and so we'd all gather there. And
nice.
When I was a little kid, my favorite was to hand the cup to the runner. I thought that was the best.
It's a weird race because Boston, all these marathons are kind of interesting because you get dropped off somewhere, or you get to some start location, and then you're just 26 miles to the finish. The New York City Marathon sort of turns in on itself, so it's not a straight line. Berlin is a circle. You start where you end. Chicago's a circle. You start where you end. But Boston, you get on a bus near the finish. Then they just drive you 26 miles away, and they drop you off at a high school, and they go, all right, see you in a few hours. Good luck.
Probably run through Framingham or whatever. And
we started in Hopkinton and then went through Ashland, Framingham.
Ashland is where I saw a ghost.
Oh, well, I feel like there's a lot of ghosts in Massachusetts in general.
Ashland is home to supposedly the most haunted tavern in Massachusetts. Sometimes they say the most haunted tavern in America. I have to look up the name, but my dad took me there when I was a kid, and I'm sure I've told this story on the podcast before. In the bathroom, they had this mirror along the wall above the stalls, and I went down there. I was in there alone. I was 8 years old, and I was using the bathroom, and I looked in the mirror, and there was someone standing behind me, not leering at me, but just there was an old man standing behind me, and I looked behind me, and there was no one there. And that's either when I had my first schizophrenic experience or when I saw a ghost. I've never been schizophrenic, apparently.
I'm going to go with
that's the one thing that I haven't.
It's the one thing you don't have.
With. I mean, kind of. That's the one thing they've never diagnosed me with, really. Anyway.
So, I mean, it was a good race. My training hasn't been where I wanted it to be. in the sense that it's been a really cold winter. It's been very snowy. So, I really made my peace with the race beforehand. And I kind of was like, if I finish in 3.5 hours, I'll be really happy. So, that's like an 8-minute mile pace. It's pretty far off my PR, but I was like, you know what? This is a hard course. I'm just going to respect the course. I'm going to give it my best effort and see how it goes. And I ran a 3:07. So,
Nice. Well, that's great.
Yeah. And it
Sometimes
was
you
pretty
just got to
good.
trust in the heart of the cards.
Yeah. There's a great little like Threads or Twitter or whatever. I guess I only see it on Threads because I don't have Twitter anymore. But it's called Cult of Running. And so people, whenever they have like a race coming up, they'll like tag Cult of Running, and this Threads account will always be like, trust the flesh, the congregation is behind you. Like it's pretty fun. Like it's like silly, but it does kind of like weirdly, I guess, motivate people. But yeah, it was pretty fun. And that's my big race for the year. I have New York City again, like later this year. That'll be my 9th marathon.
Nice.
Pretty cool. But
I couldn't run a marathon if my life depended on it. I'd die in the process, I'm sure.
You could do it. I bet.
Out of shape. Not do it. Right today.
Not today. You could run a half marathon.
Not today. These colors don't run, baby. But when I was a kid, a teenager, like middle school through high school, I went to like tons of marathons. Went to the Disney Marathon numerous times. I went to the Peachtree Marathon in Atlanta, went to other like track and field events all around the country, specifically because of wheelchair athletics.
Right.
My mom's ex-husband owns a wheelchair company, and at the time he was my stepfather. We would travel around the country with him, and I would volunteer at these events, hang out with the athletes and stuff. And that was basically a significant portion of my life from middle school through high school. So I have watched my share of runners go past and riders, really, more than anything.
It's a funny thing, Vanessa came up to spectate, and my brother was up also. But it's funny, like I was talking to her about it today. I was like, spectating a marathon kind of sucks, only in the sense that like you're going to see me for 5 seconds.
Yeah.
I'm going to run by you, and that's it. And then like, it's like, all right, see you at the end. But I did get to see them between mile 22 and 23, which is like after Heartbreak Hill, which is a big hard portion of the race. And it's like, I I only have 5K left. Like, let's go. Definitely a tough one. Yeah. Oh yeah. And you need it because, it's such a long race. I mean, they're all.
Did you drink your milk on the way?
And arsenic. Yeah.
Yes,
it was
exactly.
really helpful.
Jesus Christ.
But today was the London Marathon.
Oh, wow. How'd you do in that?
And I did not run it, but my friend did. He ran 3:03. But this marathon had the first 2 finishers to finish in under 2 hours.
Wow.
So
that's very fast.
Yep. It is insane. They finish only 11 seconds apart.
Wow.
So
you think one of them thought of tripping the other in that last 11 seconds?
The LA marathon a few weeks ago, the guy who was winning, like he took his foot off the gas a little bit, and he was like celebrating, and he was still, 200 meters out, but he'd been running by himself for so long that a high school teacher overtook him in the last like 200 meters and beat him by like a hair.
That's how it happens. Fair play.
Oh yeah. That's what, So
that's how it goes.
Anyway, enough about marathons. So this was episode 112 of Spawnography, which feels crazy to say. I'll keep, as the number keeps getting bigger, it'll keep being crazy to say.
We hit a big milestone too in listeners. We are now, probably closing in at this point on almost 9,000 listens over the course of the podcast, lifetime listens.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Which is incredible.
Cool. Thank you all for listening.
Yeah, just to the Spawn community, you guys are indispensable, and honestly, the love from the Spawn community and seeing those numbers go up a little bit, just knowing that we have that folks are along for the ride with us and that they're listening to us and kind of enjoying this great comic with us. It's been a good pick-me-up this week, and I've really needed it. So thank you, Spawn Community. You've been there for me. You've had my back.
Hell yeah. So we, last episode, we spoke with Mark Novak, Tiny Spawny of Let's Talk Spawn over on YouTube about Gunslinger. And we're learning about how Mammon has been manipulating the Simmons family for generations.
He sure has.
Is a bit of a retcon at this point, but it's one that, like, it's tough. Spawn's at a weird spot where it's tough to move forward. So you have to kind of look back. I think David Hine is like, well, I can do some stuff here, and Malbolgia is gone. So how do I flesh out a big bad in a different way?
Well, there's that quote we've come back to so many times from our interview with Todd when we spoke to him after reading Spawn number 100. You can go back and listen to that back in the Spawnography archives. This is an excellent episode, really, really fun. Todd was incredibly generous with his time and with his insights. And one of the things that he said that we have gone back to, again, if you've listened to the podcast, you've heard us discuss this. He said that he wished he had more Doctor Dooms, more mastermind villains. And I think that this is really a direct way to make Mammon a Doctor Doom for Al Simmons, in the sense that he now has that generational grudge. Much like Reed Richards and Doctor Doom. Doom has hated Richards for 20 years before Richards was even a fucking superhero.
Right.
And so there's that sort of historical aspect to their rivalry. They're not meeting for the first time necessarily. Now, Spawn hasn't realized until this point how much Mammon has been really the one pulling the strings. But I think going back and making that the case, like you said, gives some leeway and sort of bypassing Malbolgia and saying we can still have a sort of big villain that can outlast that one big milestone, which is really what comics need, right? I mean, that's why Spider-Man has the Green Goblin and Dr. Octopus. They can show up every 30, 40 issues and become an integral part of the book until, they sort of have their big moment and go, and then they come back again. And there's always some story of the manipulations they were doing in between those big moments. Like, I mean, that's Spider-Man number, what was it, 800, where he becomes, or 700, where Doc Ock takes over his mind.
Where Doc Ock, where we do Superior Spider-Man.
Exactly. And a good chunk of that issue is just going back and showing all the little clues that were planted, which a lot of us saw something coming. You see all the little clues that were planted, and then they show you the space where Dr. Octopus, what he was doing that set up those clues. And it's kind of one of those things. Yeah. It's that with Mammon here. And this predates that, but it's also not the first time that's happened in a, heroic story.
Yeah, it's the Watchmen explaining, Ozymandias explaining his plan.
It's the mastermind villain archetype. I mean, there's elements of Moriarty in that, the classic arch nemesis. Satan, of course, even going back to that, and here he is on the page. These issues are conflicting to me a little bit because they're really an attempt at kind of doing the Monster of the Week Spawn story that culminates in another layer of the, sort of Mammon onion. And it winds up being a bit of a mixed bag. We'll get into it as we go, but I almost think that if they didn't try to do quite so much Mammon in with this story and gave the actual narrative of the villain, like the primary villain, a little more space to breathe, it probably would have worked a little better pacing wise. I'm kind of doing pre-final thoughts here.
That's fine. I mean, it's good context before we get into these.
I like setting the stakes so that readers can also know, or listeners and readers can also hear how our opinion evolves, even over the course of our conversation. So that's one of the things I like about this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this, and you can kind of feel it in some of the dialogue. There's a lot of like, hey, Nyx, if you did that, why didn't you just do that thing again? Like that kind of thing. Cause they're like, oh, fuck, we sort of like wrote ourselves into a tiny bit of a corner because we gave Nyx the ability to do a thing to get us out of a certain situation that
And
now
now they
could
have
get
to
us,
do it
it
every
could get
time.
us out of every situation.
It's like when someone suddenly learns time travel, and
Right.
it's like, well, you got to put some kind of rule on this or everything's fucked.
Exactly. And so like there's a little bit of Hein's dialogue that I think feels pretty stilted because he's trying to explain away why we can't just snap our fingers and fix everything.
Well, like the Flash's cosmic treadmill, that's a pretty early thing. You know, that's the way he gets to Earth 2 in Spawn of Two Worlds back in the day.
Spawn
But
of Two Worlds.
hell yeah, let's do it. I meant Flash of Two Worlds, but you can see where my mind is. Always on the big guy. But even that had risks, like he wound up in another reality or another time or lost in the Speed Force. There was a risk that he wouldn't come back. And that's why, like, same reason when he ran at the speed of light to like breach time, there's a risk he'd never make it back. And so, like, you can't put that kind of power into a character without a backdoor. Relevant to Spawn again, that's exactly what happened here, which
what
is
the power meter was.
The power meter all the way into Spawn becoming the savior and rebuilder of the world in the so-called white light, which will come into these issues several times. You know, it's the same thing where you couldn't leave him with that power.
Right.
You couldn't leave Al Simmons as like the omnipotent guardian and being of the world. Now, that would have been an interesting story on some level because the story would become the challenges he faces in trying to live up to his own ideals as, you know, what a leader is. But I also think that, you know, once a character is no longer an underdog, there's not a lot of places to go but for them to be a villain. And we've already seen that story. That was Spawn Wildcats, which we actually did discuss as well. With who is our guest? Adam.
It was Adam Reck.
Adam Reck. That's what I thought. Yes,
that was way back in episode 48.
There you go. And we kind of talked about. I loved that crossover as a kid, but we saw that where Spawn became like the most powerful being on Earth, and then it corrupted him. So I think it's much more interesting to have him get knocked down to being the underdog again.
Yeah. The thing that I do like about this arc, again, and we'll get into it in just a couple minutes, but is I like the Nyx Spawn dynamic. It's really growing on me.
Well, there's a little bit of a Batman and Robin-ness to it. Yeah. You see why that dynamic, as they call it, has worked for 190 years or however it's long it's been since Batman debuted.
Yeah, I mean, superheroes thrive in with a sort of dynamic duo at the center. One, because it gives the main character somebody to talk to that's not just themselves, like brooding on rooftops, even though that's fine. And Spawn, I mean,
that's a part of comics and, you know, those kind of comics too. But
and Spawn has had those characters for a really long time, right?
We had the Night People, we had Cog, we had Angela, even my favorite version of it.
Well, Spangela. And I was going to say, Angela was really the best version of it for Spawn because she could really go tit for tat with him.
She could match him, and she had that like inverse power set things. I ship Spangela. Absolutely, I do.
They should put Spawn in Marvel Rivals.
I'd lose my fucking mind. That would be the end of it, dude. That would be fucking crazy. Dude, okay, just do Spawn and Spider-Man. I want it so bad. I know why they won't, but like, look, they just did Superman, Spider-Man. Exactly. That's, you know, in a lot of ways, comics is a lot like professional wrestling in the sense that the business is the business. And if you have a chance to do business, you usually take it because it's often just an opportunity and not always a commitment. And I think that that's the thing, is that maybe there's some room someday for the idea of those characters meeting, but God, it lives in my mind. It would be so,
you know, it does feel like it. I feel like Todd has too much pride maybe to let it happen, in the sense that it would, I don't know if he would feel like, and maybe we can ask him one day, if doing it might feel like an admission that he needs to do it. You know what I mean?
No, that's fair. I mean, you know, there are so many reasons it might not happen. It would just be great. I mean, obviously, as a fan, it would be so cool.
If Marvel if Marvel had Todd just do a Spider-Man cover, they'd sell 1 million copies.
Oh, it'd be crazy. It'd be wild.
I'd buy it.
But it's like you said. I don't think it would take backing up a money truck, because I think Todd is beyond that at this point,
Sure.
on some level, from Marvel at least. But I think it would take something significant in the way of an olive branch from them to him.
What if they gave him Angela back?
Honestly, if they just did a Spawn Angela again,
yeah,
that would be the fucking so good.
Yeah,
I've come around to Marvel Angela a little bit because of the original Spawn Angela. You know, she was just one of the characters that surprised me so much too, because I always thought of her as like a boring bad girl stereotype. She's an angel. Her name is Angela. It's a little obvious. She wears a ribbon and nothing else. And this was also kind of in the era of like Lady Justice, Lady Death, Lady Rawhide, like the actual bad girl, like skimpy,
every Danger
Jessica
Girl,
Rabbit
every
with a
Scott
gun kind of
Campbell,
thing. Yeah. Which there's some charm in that. I don't mind cheesecake.
Totally. I actually
but at the
like
same
some of
time,
the Danger Girl comics.
Danger Girl's a little better because at least you have multiple women in it, and they're not necessarily.
Well, it passes the Bechdel test. So,
on some level, I'm sure it does. I loved the art in that when I was a kid. All of those books. Was it Cliffhanger? Was that the original imprint? I think.
Maybe, yeah.
With fucking Battle Chasers, dude. Joe Mad. What's that? Has he drawn Spawn? Because that would
probably
be
a pinup.
Fucking crazy. Maybe in the 90s he did, but I would love to see him do a Spawn cover now, because that is a dude whose art and his style is just immediately recognizable in a truly iconic way.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm not really finding anything.
That would be great. I would love to see. Honestly, look, I think what I'm really saying is that I'd like to see more attention paid to Spawn as this kind of like classic legacy sort of prestige title, that like have Bernie Wrightson do a cover or something, or not Bernie Wrightson, he's dead. Sienkiewicz is what I meant. Have Sienkiewicz do a cover. Maybe he has.
Have Walt Simonson do one.
Fuck yeah. See, like that's what I'm saying. Like, and maybe we don't know what goes on behind the scenes, but just again, purely from a fan perspective of like, on the same level of like, wouldn't it be cool if like Spawn fought the Hulk? Wouldn't it be cool if fucking like I said, Joe Madureira drew Spawn or something like that?
Especially because we've gotten sort of Joe Mad acolytes that have drawn Spawn, like John Boy Myers, I would say, is definitely a guy who
for sure.
takes some key,
takes
some influence.
Even Medina had some of that sort of similar parallel sort of influences.
Manga influences and stuff.
Yeah. Speaking of manga, we'll get into that.
Yeah, the closest thing I can find to what Joe Mad drawing anything Spawn is for Dungeon Runners. He drew something called Shadow Spawn. And this shit is the coolest like monster Shadow Spawn Reaver concept art. I'm going to send this to you. It's like, I'm like, yeah, I just want Spawn to go to hell and like fight these guys.
Oh yeah, that rules.
Right?
I mean, again, Joe Mad, like his Marvel stuff was incredible. His Image stuff was great. I mean, Battle Chasers became a whole video game franchise and everything. Excuse me. But I just, his art just always hits me in that button of like, man, there's something to this that just transcends the era where it was really. And I guess, you know, speaking of it, that's why I'd really like to see someone like him do Spawn, because as we always say, it's a title that also transcends its heyday.
I have a question for you that is about comics at large, because I was thinking about this recently, that we've seen the industry really go in these like 30-year cycles.
Mm-hmm.
And where I would argue that with the heyday of the absolute line right now, the relative success of the ultimate line as well, that they sort of like didn't really cancel it / they don't seem to totally know what's going on there. But also the amount of indie comics right now that are having their moment, and the fact that we are kind of back to an artist forward industry more than we
Are
have
we?
been.
I think
I'd
we are in
say
a
on some
creator
level,
backwards industry, at least in terms of the mainstream. You know, you're probably
well,
right outside of like Marvel and DC on a bigger level. Uh, I feel like there's
I just
just
feel like
not a lot of
we
creative
have
bandwidth at those
superstar
places.
artists again. I'm not saying
Yeah, that's true.
that they have like carte blanche to do whatever they want, but I'm saying that we have like interesting artists. Peach Momoko is a great example of
Oh,
this. I think
there's
Daniel
some.
Warren
That's true.
Johnson. Daniel Warren Johnson is a guy that they let him do an absolute Batman, and they were like, "Yep, go for it, fucking
I mean,
go for
we've
it."
said this before. He is the Walt Simonson of our generation.
Totally. But, I do think that it feels a little bit like when, we were kids and the image explosion was happening and you had Jim Lee on fucking X-Men. And I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, look, if we separate comics into eras, I have two thoughts that I want to get to. First
Sure.
one is this. I believe the last epic of comics was the early 2000s to about 2020, and we'll call that
Mhm.
the Diamond era
Okay.
for obvious reasons.
Sure.
And now, on some level, I think we are in the Rust era, to
Okay.
borrow a phrase, because we're trying to kick off the dust and figure out what's next after the era when superheroes were really the dominant powerhouse. We're kind of in the Western, like post-Western era of superheroes in a way where like they're still happening, not post-Western, but like, the wind down of that genre where it went from being the most popular thing in the world to being just kind of a blip to being gone for years. I don't know that superheroes will necessarily be gone until
No.
we can't process the data
The
anymore
heat death of
because
the
the Earth
universe or whatever.
exactly.
Yeah.
But they're trying to figure it out right now, and they're also trying to figure out what comics can say, especially superhero comics. And the eras of comics really apply to superhero comics. I feel like they're just trying to figure out how to make the machine move correctly again. And that's why we see so much stuff that is just so nostalgia driven. That's an artifact of our entire culture.
Yeah.
It's just kind of the way it is. And the other thing is, you talk about absolute, ultimate stuff like that. I think the thing that people want, especially now, I think people want endings for stories that are like, I don't think people want to try and engage in something that is going to go on forever. I think they want something, even if they do read Amazing Spider-Man, they want a story that they're going to get a full story out of. It's not
Yeah.
just a commercial for the next issue on some level. That's why DC, when you look at the greatest DC stories, they're the ones that are really singular, standalone, Kingdom Come, even Crisis on some level, things like that.
Even
Brave New World.
their great runs have specific stories within them that people point to. I mean, this is true of Marvel as well, but like
Sure. But Marvel, you look more at the great runs. Like you look at like Daredevil Born Again, which is like a run of Daredevil. It's not Kingdom Come, which was its own limited series or its own standalone thing. It's just interesting to see that dynamic. And we're now 30 minutes into the episode.
I mean, we took some breaks. Stuff's getting cut. But, I'm thinking like Teen Titans. We think of that as a great run. But when we think of Teen Titans, you think of the Judas Contract. Like that is the specific.
I was just reading some new Teen Titans.
I mean, we've recommended it multiple times on this show because it's great. But, even like X-Men, sure, Claremont, you go the Claremont run. Yes, you can pick out Dark Phoenix Saga. Yes, you can pick out Inferno if you want to. You can pick out.
But there's just so many. He told every important story of the X-Men for years. He told these stories of the X-Men that are now the like Dark Knight Returns of the X-Men.
Right, exactly.
Dark Phoenix Saga is the one that just everybody who looks at X-Men goes, I want to do that one. Yeah. It's like everyone who does Batman is either doing Year One or fucking, Dark Knight Returns on some level. And it's like.
Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right. And Claremont's Marstonian run on X-Men was, impressive. But yeah, no, I don't know. I guess maybe my theory doesn't hold a lot of water, but I am just thinking about like, we have the birth of Marvel in the early 60s. We have the birth of Image in the early 90s.
Yeah.
And it feels like we have a lot of young creators who have come up post-pandemic, making a name for themselves. Look at James Tynan's Tiny Onion imprints. We're seeing what Kirkman and Skybound are doing. We're seeing, maybe it's not the heights of success that those previous ones I was kind of saying, like that I mentioned, reached. But what I'm saying is that they are comics that are putting themselves in front of people and saying, I dare you to ignore this. You kind of can't, because it is the coolest thing that is happening.
Well, you know, I think that it's maybe an important time. I think in some ways an inversion of the 90s, where mainstream comics were thriving so much that it was a rising tide raising the fleet. You had so many people selling stuff on the back of like fucking Fight Killer #1 landmark first issue, and people like you've talked before about your dad going and buying every #1 issue.
Yep.
You know, so I think that there's an element of that where we don't have the fad of comics anymore, and we're also kind of running a little low on the juice of the fad of superheroes because we haven't had a compelling, great story in a while.
Yeah. I think also and listeners are probably screaming at their iPhones right now being like, what about manga? And I think that like manga is its own separate thing that
it is so separate.
I'm not applying to this conversation, because the Western comics market and the manga market are just, manga rules everything around us in terms of sales. It's doing numbers like crazy. It's opening big at the box office, like Demon Slayer, Jujutsu Kaisen, whatever the hell.
Fucking
like
Chainsaw Man, so good.
Yeah. And you know, if you're gonna create a like more of a one-to-one to like the image boom and the like mainstream comics boom of the early 90s, I think you'd probably say manga has taken that baton and blew it out of the fucking water.
Well, I mean, look, it is the most popular media in sort of one of the most populous geographic regions on Earth,
right,
that is full of people who are passionate. And manga in most of Asia is like podcasting in the United States.
Yeah.
Like there's just infinity people who are like doing manga stories, and there's so many, there's just so much of it.
Right.
And it's so accessible. I mean, we've talked about the format wars with it before, but that's why you can't put them in the same league, because it's not even sold the same way.
It's also considered culturally so much differently. Like people, even in 2026, do kind of like not side eye you for reading comics, but they're like, oh, that's weird. I didn't know they still made those. Whereas like manga is like a part of culture in a way that it is like, oh, you're like on the high speed train to work. Like, what are you reading? Like everybody's kind of
people will
something.
Dig into 1,000 episodes of One Piece faster than they'll read like 20 issues of comics. And part of it is 100%. Because you can just watch that, even, and if you want to read along with it, you can. There is less stigmatization around digital manga and digital manga readers and stuff. And on that note, Pierce, why don't you hit me with the credits for Spawn number 176, and we'll talk more about manga as we go.
I love that. Thanks for catching the segue that I was kind of trying to set up. Spawn number 176, Todd McFarlane Image Comics present The Monster in the Bubble, Part 1. Story by David Hine, art by Brian Haberlin and Gerard Van Dyke, lettering by Tom Orzechowski, production by Francis Takanaga. Oh, if I was saying Takanaga before, I apologize. Assistant editor Francis Takanaga. Cover by Greg Capullo. This one, and Spawn editors Brian Haberlin and Todd McFarlane, of course. Dedicated to Veronica Morrissey, a person I could not find, probably just somebody that either worked for McFarlane Productions or Ad Image or something. When I searched it, all that Google gave back to me was, what is Morrissey's gender identity? And
asshole.
Yeah, mostly. Well, I don't know if you know this, but he does credit himself with pushing the sort of gender fluid agenda forward, that he was doing it before everybody else, and that he's not gay, he's not straight, he's humasexual.
Okay. He was assigned bitch at birth.
Yeah, fuck Morrissey. That's the official stance of this podcast.
The better version of that, and I know that he's not necessarily a pioneer of like some of that generation, but maybe for a younger generation, I'd say would be Gerard Way. We can
Sure.
also say
Sure.
David Bowie before him. We can say, I'm just thinking of people I like better.
You can pick
that are more
anybody that's not Robert Smith.
Relevant. Robert Smith.
You can pick anybody that's not Morrissey.
I'm trying to think of people who don't suck as much as people or musicians.
David Bowie does kind of suck. He had
his ups and downs, but there are some ups and downs. There are some bad things. I'm not going to claim he's a saint, but I think he sucks way less than Morrissey, and I think he learned a lot more from the bad shit that he did than Morrissey ever will.
I agree with that.
So anyway,
when we
I looked at Gerard Van Dyke, by the way. I looked at his Instagram. It's fucking sick. His stuff.
I was going to say, I think the art combination on art here, because notably there's no like inks colors breakdown. So I think it's Haberlin. Feels like it's like Haberlin breakdowns, Van Dyke finishes, Haberlin colors.
Maybe so. I mean, I think it's probably some kind of some kind of close collaboration like that. I don't know.
Gerard Van Dyke's art is cool.
Yeah,
and
looks great.
I like it. It's got this like sort of hyper realistic thing, but it is still cartoony enough that you're not fully put off when he starts drawing weird stuff.
It looks to me like peak level Bengus on some level. Do you know Bengus?
Yeah.
Those of our listeners who don't should look up his.
Is it Bengus or Bengal?
Bengus. Bengal is a different person. Bengal is a modern artist who has done Euro comics and Western comics. Bengus, Bengus, is a manga artist and a video game concept artist, primarily for Capcom.
Who did
so much iconic art. His Marvel vs. Capcom 2 designs are just absolutely iconic.
Super iconic.
So, or at least his concept art. The designs mostly come from comics.
Oh, it's Alien Day. He did some background artwork for Alien vs. Predator.
Forgot about that. Alien.
Darkstalkers. He was the main illustrator for Darkstalkers. Super Street Fighter 2. He was promotional main illustrator. X-Men vs. Street Fighter.
He's iconic. Like you've seen his art and loved it, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Yeah,
but
totally.
Anyway, speaking of manga artists, we're going to get into that in these issues of Spawn, and we've said that a bunch of times, but it's really true. What we're going to open with is two guys, Detective James Riley and who's his partner? We don't get his name yet. And they are trying to get inside this apartment, and what should happen but shards of glass and blood start coming from above, and we don't see exactly what happens, but
cuts away as
shocking.
Yeah, cuts away as one of the detectives says, "Oh, my sweet lord." And
we talked about Dean White before. There is a real Dean White quality to some of these colors, and it looks great. Like if you look at these panels of the guy going, "Oh, my sweet lord," that middle panel, I mean, that looks like Constantine, but in such a great way.
Oh, I was going to say it feels Temple Smithy a little bit.
You know who really this looks like to me, who is very contemporary at the time, is Daniel Acuna, especially at this time, way he uses colors and values and stuff. We can also say, maybe some Jerome Pena. These are all artists contemporary to this, and whenever we get into this, I always feel self-conscious because, I know artists don't like to be compared to other artists necessarily, but, this is for context. I always say that. And also, to me, it's joyful to see, this reminds me of such great art.
Also, too, this is an audio medium, so we're trying to paint a picture here. If you don't know one of the artists that we're talking about, we're trying to say
go look them up.
Yeah.
There's a very brush strokey quality to the art. If you zoom in, it almost looks like oil paint. That is some very interesting texture work for the time.
Yeah, again, I think I'm really thinking that it's maybe not Haberlin colors, but maybe it's Haberlin breakdowns, Van Dyke paints. You know what I mean? Digital or otherwise, but yes,
or
there's
it could be
brush.
Van Dyke doing the pencils and Haberlin doing the colors, and we don't know. I mean, I think it's kind of charming and sort of intriguing that it's enmeshed so well that we can't just say, oh, it's this and this. I think that's the point of an artistic collaboration like that. So
Yeah.
we cut from there to 18 hours ago. We'll find out what just happened here, but we'll cut to 18 hours ago at the Simmons household. Al just went home to his parents' house to find that his father and mother have basically been trapped in this dimensional vortex where his dad is just in a trance watching the blank TV like the fucking kid from Poltergeist. And it's all due to Mammon, or as they knew him as kids, Mr. Malefic, manipulating his mother into giving up Al to basically become the Hellspawn. It's sort of like, it's like Rosemary's adolescence. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's like, this is what happens to Rosemary's baby after the baby's born, in a way. And so we find out Mammon's come in and out of his childhood, manipulated events to turn Al into a stone cold killer so he would become the Hellspawn, et cetera, to set up this situation, remake the world, cut off heaven and hell, leave Mammon on Earth, where he can now presumably become the master of creation, because creation is now a sphere that he can grasp.
Yeah.
And so Spawn found out that Mammon's manipulations go back 200 years in his family tree. His father had a diary of his great grandfather's diary that showed how Mammon had influenced him all the way back, 200 years ago in like the early 1800s.
Yeah. And
And
that's where we got our first look at a version of Gunslinger Spawn, who, as we spoke about with Mark, is not the version that we have these days, but
he's
is
the
kind of a
proto
proof of,
gunslinger Spawn.
yeah, he's like the proof of concept, essentially.
Yeah.
And we'll meet the current gunslinger eventually in this podcast. But, Spawn is at the point where, he's always had these questions where he doesn't understand anything. And now he's getting answers and he really, really doesn't like them.
No.
And he is.
Well, it always comes back to Mammon too.
Yeah. Well, and he's frustrated also because one thing I do really like about this arc is that we do get the sense, and we've never really met his family before these more recent issues.
We
did
met
meet
Mark Simmons, who will come back here.
Right. But even their relationship seems somewhat strained. We didn't really get details there.
Well, and we see some of why, which is that, as Al says on this page where he's confronting his father, Mark was the best of them. He's the only one who saw through Malefic and saw the way he was being manipulated and turned his back. We know his youngest brother, Richard, was manipulated into killing his pusher. It's like a whole terrible situation.
I really love Al saying that Mark was the best of us because he saw through this. It does two things. I think one, Al is regaining his humanity because of his reconnection with his family, and because of Nyx, telling him that
and
he
he's
needed
got
to.
new people to care about and fret over. Wanda's basically safe. The Mother of Miracles said Wanda and
Terry are
Cyan and Terry they're safe.
But the second thing it does is Mark being able to see through it, but also being like this forensic investigator speaks to that character, right?
Yes.
It says, well, this is who Mark has always been. He's always been the one who can put things together. He's always been the one who sees the bigger picture kind of before other people see it. I'm like harping on like one little line, but like
it's important. That's what good writing is.
It's
especially
really good
good
work
comic writing. Especially good comic writing, you get that one line or one word bubble that matches something we know about the character that just gives you that insight, because you only have so much space, so you have to get those moments in. And so the TV starts coming to life for the first time, and Al's dad sees Mark on the TV. He finds out Mark is a doctor because he hasn't seen or heard from his sons in decades. They've been trapped in this sort of void. And we catch up with Mark Simmons, who is being asked about 3 bizarre slayings, one in Omaha, one in Los Angeles, and one in Seattle. And the reporter is saying, can you shed light on who or what is responsible? And he says, well, it's too early to draw conclusions, but I can assure you it's a who and not a what. We're dealing with a human being. I don't believe in ghosts or demons of the supernatural.
Ha ha ha.
Okay. And so we get back to, first off, it's crazy how they've connected these 3 murders somehow.
Yeah, like almost
the press
instantly.
has done it. The press is like 3 weird murders in different parts of the country. First off, we really took notice of that, and also as like a pattern before anyone else did. And we're really going to ask you about it. And like, this is a comic book, but it's fine.
Also,
I can
listen,
stop. I can't stop the criminal justice critical part of my brain.
Well, in Kash Patel's FBI, that's why Mark's there. They knew about it before it happened.
Oh man, Kash Patel.
By the time this episode comes out, he might not even be the FBI director.
One of the
anymore.
only dudes in America who's having a worse week than I am.
Yeah.
And he still has his job.
Well,
can't believe I lost my job before Kash Patel.
Yeah. Do you think Kash Patel will
I
lose
don't
his
even
job
have
before...
challenge coins.
Not yet. Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why it happened. Maybe you should have gotten challenge coins. That way, when they were like, "Hey, George, we've got bad news," and you'd be
challenge,
like, challenge.
I challenge this. Uno reverse.
You should have.
Damn it! I should have had one of those
in your wallet,
right on hand. I should have had it right in my pocket. Should be like, nope.
I tried that once, but it was actually a draw 4, and
that sucks.
Yeah, so.
Well, I don't even know what that did to your career. So back in the void where Hal's parents get stuck, Nyx is trying to break the barrier, and she says, I can't get through it. We can only get through it because Mammon allows us to. And Al says, well, my parents will stay here and we'll go to Seattle. And Nyx is like, you're going to Seattle? And Spawn says, do I have a choice? And she says, well, if I can quote you on the subject, there's always a choice. And he says, then I choose to go to Seattle.
We're getting some fun, like, back and forth. That's good.
As he leaves, his mother looks back at his father, Bernard, and she sees that Bernard has bites. He has bites on his neck.
It's really weird. So the storytelling here is like a little obfuscated because we don't really exactly know what's going on. Bernard looks surprised. We zoom in on these like bites on his neck, and then we just see Mammon
with his like shrouded guy.
Yeah,
that he's been hanging out with.
It's unclear exactly what the hell's happening. Did Bernard change into Mammon?
Well, we see Bernard's bite. Or the bite in his neck, and maybe he does become Mammon. The storytelling here is very weird. What's important is when we get a close-up on the face of the hooded figure, we can just barely make out fangs and blood below his flame-like beady eyes. Yeah. And so this is some kind of vampire.
And then
he's
Al's
wearing
mom,
like some kind of regalia. He looks like he's wearing maybe like Eastern European clothes,
like military.
Is this fucking Dracula? I don't know.
We'll see. But what's funny is that Al's mom is surprised, and then she smiles, and then we cut away, and we're like, okay.
Yep. And she says, my lord, I knew you would always come back for me. And he says, faithful Esther, always so patient, so obedient. I've brought someone to meet you. Can you guess who it is? And I think the idea here is I'm finally going to give you the eternal life I've promised you. Because that's part of the deal. She was promised all this stuff. So we cut to Seattle, the apartment of Javier Martinez, deceased. It says, we bagged Martinez in 39 separate pieces. They don't know if anything's missing. It could take a while. There's some stuff laying around. He's got a sort of Jetfire transformer. He's got the Akira bike, and he's got a Gundam, a Gunpla model.
I don't think it's Jetfire. I think it's Macross.
Oh, you're right. Well, Jetfire was a Macross figure.
Was it? Oh, well, yes. There we go.
3 sick fucking anime right there. I mean, Akira is one of my favorite films of all time. He's also got manga on the ground. I can't even see what it is.
I can't really make it out.
Man, maybe. And he's got like posters on his walls. He's just like, he's got the Naruto poster fucking in like 2007. He's OG Naruto. This dude was Naruto running when he fucking exploded or something. And it says there's a lot of mucus around the place, I guess not of human origin. They realize something's missing from the shelf, and suddenly Mark Simmons, this is very funny, and I actually really loved this beat, and I'll tell you why. Mark Simmons is like, according to this, Javier Martinez took second place in the Tokyo Blast Rising Talent manga competition. God damn it. All 3 victims were award winners in this competition. Why didn't anyone spot this? And the other detective says, these murders are only officially linked today. Our data isn't coordinated yet. Which, how is it linked yet? We don't know. And the guy says, give us a break, Doc. We don't have access to all those fancy computer databases you got out there at Quantico. And he holds up his phone and it's just Google.
His phone is also a Dell. It's some sort of, maybe it's like a Dell Palm Pilot or something.
Yeah, or whatever. I mean, we got a lot of early model like camera phones and Blackberries and shit in these issues. Suddenly they turn around, their thoughts interrupted the other 2 detectives, and we see these weird halo around their heads, and they just say, we have to go question a witness. And so I love this beat because even up until like very recently, even sort of now, there's very little communication between departments of police and other agencies. That's why they never solved like the Golden State Killer, or figured out what the fuck the deal was with the Zodiac, because they just didn't have cross communication. They didn't have the
part of that is not just
the files.
Part of that is not just the technology. It is partly, I think, ego. I think
yes, absolutely.
Like, if I share
they
information,
all want to be the one to crack the case.
Yeah. So
because it was and is still true that being a hero cop can be a one-way ticket to, you can dine out on that for the rest of your life. There are going to be people who are like,
being a hero, anything. Look at Sully Sullenberger.
I mean, I know a guy whose dad was an investigator who fucking caught a serial killer, not a well-known one. And like that made his life basically.
Yeah.
Like, which is crazy. But anyway, who should show up but Spawn? And we can't tell if Spawn is the one who sent them away or what. We'll get a bit of an answer. Spawn shows up and Mark is immediately like, oh shit, and pulls out his gun, starts shooting at Spawn. We know that's not going to do anything for him. And he says, Spawn says, aren't you supposed to issue a warning before you do that?
I like that Spawn's been being a little funny in this arc. Like, it's pretty dry, but he's like having a little bit of fun, being a little quippy.
And Mark is like, why did you kill these people? Spawn says, I didn't kill them. And who should show up but Nyx and say, you don't need the gun, Mark. Everything's okay. Basically Jedi mind trick him. She says, look at him. Don't you recognize him? And Mark does recognize him, but not as Al Simmons or even Spawn, as the savior who remade the world after the so-called white light, the rapture, all that stuff.
Yeah, but his logical brain is still like, nope, that didn't happen. And Nyx kind of does her thing again. I actually love these panels of Nyx kind of exerting her influence a little bit. Like telling, like you said, Jedi mind tricking him into like believing them is. But I guess she goes a little too far because he basically gets distracted that she's pretty. And or that like her powers don't work exactly the way she thinks that they're working, which does make sense. He'll behave
normally, more or less.
Yeah. But yeah, she uses this charm on him and asks Sal, like, when are you going to tell him who you really are? It's your brother. And he says, well, when it's done, maybe. I don't know. He kind of brushes it off, but he tells Mark to do his job, and he starts calling in to his, his colleagues about like, we've got this comic book art competition. It links all the Vics. Let's find the other 2 winners. They'll need 24-hour protection. I need a list of who entered the competition and lost, because
we find out there's 5,000 people who entered and lost, which sounds about right. And he says, I didn't even know that many people even read comics, which, like, again, God, comics is the same.
Funny
You know what
joke.
I mean? Comics is the same. And so Nyx uses a little bit of psychometry, the power of like reading objects and places, and discovers the trophy, one of the trophies that is missing from this room because this guy was one of the runners up. And she realizes, oh, it's got something to do with that. We discover that Mark Simmons has already kind of zeroed in on one suspect somehow. And it is a guy named Kenneth Erskine, who is 17 years old. He lives in an isolation chamber, kind of like the boy in the bubble. You know what I mean? And he can't go outside. He can't breathe normal air. He's basically like profoundly disabled in that way. He has some serious medical support needs, we'll say. And so we find out that he's been in there since he was 6 months old. And the doctor who cares for him says his alibi is literally airtight. But Mark Simmons addresses Kenneth and he turns around and his face is all mutated. He's got like a Hector Hammond kind of thing going on.
Yeah.
He almost looks like Sloth or something. His head is all kind of like matted and
Warped
mutated.
and
It's warped. Yeah. And we'll find out why.
Yeah.
But
I mean, he
they
says
start
it. He
in-
says that it's because his air supply got contaminated.
Yes, he says his air
and-
supply got contaminated during the white light. Now, what we've learned also is that there are people who did come through the white light who were left behind and whose souls kind of became like almost lost. That's how
Right.
Clown took that guy's body that was dying in the incinerator
in
or
the air shaft or
trash chute.
or
It was the
garbage chute.
trash
Yeah,
chute,
there we
yes.
go. But yeah, it's one thing that kind of keeps recurring is that Al did not put the world back correctly, that he wasn't
Yes.
able to really think of everything, and we're seeing how that kind of
We also
Rip
said
that- we're
humans
seeing that
have to
ripple
make their
effect.
own way.
Yeah.
Like he said he wasn't going to cleanse the world of sin or evil. And so, you know, he kind of quips, Mark says he's sorry because of the injuries, and Kenneth quips, you know, it's no big deal. I never socialized much anyway. And he kind of reads Kenneth for filth. He's like, are you serious that you think I, a person who's never been more than, you know, what does he say, a dozen
Like 10
feet from this room,
yards.
10 yards from this room, you think I've traveled across the country and killed people? And he says, brilliant deduction, Sherlock. And then Mark gets a call. And he says, whoever's on the other end says, I talked to the people at Tokyo Blast. We have addresses for the 2 surviving winners. Kimberly Manson and Bud Hoser. Agents are on the way. And he says, what about Kenneth Erskine? And we find out that basically his manga story is like his fantasy world where he is like
Where he's
able to leave the room, and
basically.
we'll learn that there's more direct connection to that.
Yeah.
And suddenly Mark realizes, oh my God, he's doing psychic projections. And we get this great shot of Kenneth's face, like all fucking twisted
Super
up into
cool.
this evil grimace. They say he's going after Kimberly Manson. And we see we see the pages she wrote where it's like her self-insert fanfic comics.
Well, we see the pages that Kenneth is working on. These are the pages on his work table.
Yes,
and
that's right.
How he
honestly, I have to say the one problem I have with some of this is some of the storytelling gets a little tight.
Yeah, it cuts around in a weird way, but I know that it is just trying to get us where it needs to go. And I think, like I said, Hein's dialogue is trying to bridge the gap where the art is not really. The art's beautiful, pretty much across the book, but then it leaves a little bit to be desired in terms of transitioning between scenes and letting you know what's
Yeah.
actually happening. So yeah, we see his drawing table and we see like, oh fuck, he's already going after the next one. And it cuts to Kimberly's house where she's brought this guy home, and he's like, oh, didn't your mother ever tell you not to bring strange guys home? And she's like, well, you look like the guy in my story. And he's like, oh, I do. And as he says that, his face is
It starts like flowing towards her in tendrils, like his
Yeah, it's cool.
flesh. It looks awesome. That is such a great panel. Leading into the next panel where he's just this mass of like psychic brain energy. I love this monster. This is like a perfect like psychic chaos monster, thought eater kind of thing. And he says, is this strange enough for you? And by the way, did I tell you how much I hate your crappy manga? What a nerd.
I like the lettering for this section too.
Yes. It's really good. Big Orzakowski W. And we hear as she's being pulled into the air by this psychic being, hi, Kimberly. It says, hi, Kimberly is working or sleeping or shopping or whatever, as her answering machine goes off. And they get a call that it's Detective James Riley urgently trying to reach her downstairs.
It's the detective from those opening pages, essentially.
Yes. Spawn shows up. He says, let her go, Kenneth. Realizing that, he's the psychic monster. We get a kind of rare Haberlin sort of layout L where the creature is directly on the crease. We all know how much I hate that. But Spawn is like whipping chains at him. He says, let her go. And he says, who the hell are you? And he says, I'm your worst nightmare, Kenneth. I protect people from scum like you. And he does the like classic like Joker, like, you want me to let her go? No problem. And throws her out the window. Spawn immediately disengages and jumps after her. But
Kenneth catches him with all of his tendrils, stabbing the tendrils through his body. Another classic Spawn trope. He's got to get stabbed
all of this
through the chest.
Great. We've talked about the art from Are You Afraid of the Dark before, right?
I think we have, yeah.
Or not Are You Afraid of the Dark? I'm sorry, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yes. The monster here, some of these pages, the one where he's like impaling Spawn, looks like some of that shit. There's a Fraser Irving quality to a lot of this. Another big contemporary at the time. And he fails to catch Kimberly. And Spawn's, the guy says, Kenneth says, you want to save the world from me? Take a good look, asshole. You couldn't even save one little girl. What a fucking killer page. As he says, You couldn't even save one little girl. We see her, unfortunately, splattered on the ground as people are running towards her. But it goes from this panel of Spawn being like impaled on these like nightmare tendrils that are like coming out of his face. It's almost like Tetsuo's
coming out of his head even.
It's almost like Tetsuo's arm at the end of Akira, which we know is an influence here, where like it's just growing over everything around him.
I love the close-up on Spawn's eyes as well, because it's all the goop and it's all the necroplasm, but it does look like he's crying.
Yes, and another very painterly kind of, this is like early on in that sort of, I think this is digital painting, of course, but early on in that really like very painterly sort of digital approach to like almost oil.
Yeah, looks awesome. And that will bring us to the shocking conclusion of the Monster in the Bubble part in Spawn number 177. Would you like me to...
You know what to do, Pierce. Hit me with the credits.
Great. Tom McFarlane Image Comics present Spawn number 177, The Monster in the Bubble Part 2. Story by David Hine. Pencils by Brian Haberlin. Inks by Rodell Nora and Brian Haberlin. Colors by Andy Troy and Ian Hannon. Lettering by Tom Orzakowski. Production by Francis Takanega. Assistant editor Francis Takanega. Cover by Brian Haberlin. He doesn't do covers all that often, so it's nice to see him do one. Dedicated to Jeff Phillips. I found out who Jeff Phillips was. He makes action figure displays.
Nice.
And so I guess, and he shouts out, I found like a little interview he did in 2009. So it would have been like right after this. And he credits McFarlane for making great toys. And also, I guess that's early days of NECA. and he was like, "Oh, and NECA
Yeah.
is doing some really cool stuff, and I think they're really
This
taking the
was
baton."
that early days of adult collector stuff where we had like this was in the era right when like the Masters of the Universe and DC Classics line, the adult
Mm-hmm.
collector lines from Mattel were popping up. And again, McFarlane really pioneered that. We've talked about that
Mm-hmm.
before, where he saw the appeal in creating figures that, or he saw the potential in creating figures that would appeal to both children and adult collectors, because that was part of the fun of the Spawn toys, is that they looked way more like detailed and killer than like the Toy Biz Marvel figures, which Toy Biz had to go to Marvel Legends around this time in order to compete.
I got. I don't think I told you this. My college roommate stayed at my house with his family, and he's got 2 young kids that are 6 and 3, and they saw all my Spawn figures, and I got to watch in real time as they had never seen anything like this, and they were just like, "Oh." I was like, "Is that the coolest thing you've ever seen?" And they were like, "Yes." And it was like
And you were like,
Cygor and
never
Tremor
touch
and
it.
stuff. No, it was fine. I was like, "You can
My house would be
play with them, I
hell
don't
on
care."
earth for a child. Like
Well, it'd be
literally
heaven on earth until they said you said, and you can't touch any of it.
yes, and then it would become nightmare reality where like there's just dozens and dozens and dozens of figures from like the last 50 years. I just found another rare figure in my collection. I was watching a YouTube video and I saw it listed for 350 euros. And I was like, what? I know where that is. And I went out to my box and I found it. And the one I have is complete. I can't even find
Nice.
another complete one. It is a Flexatron Flexor.
What the hell's that?
It is a bendy, like, you know, those rubber bendy guys that have like wire interior frames?
Yeah, like Stretch Armstrong.
No, Stretch Armstrong's filled with gel, so they don't stretch, they just bend. They have no real articulation. They're like wireframe figures. It's a knockoff of He-Man.
Oh my god, I'm looking at it online. Yeah, holy shit. Anyway,
Yeah,
cool.
I
Well,
have a crazy
congrats.
toy collection. Yeah. So
We open with somebody recording what's just happened on their Razor phone or something,
yeah,
and they're thinking about how the news
that is the
channels are going to
first
be.
camera phone.
Yeah, they're thinking about how the news channels are going to be all over this. They're filming Spawn. They're filming the cops. They're filming, unfortunately, the girl who was thrown out the window, Kimberly. And they're getting yelled at by the detective who's like, "Hey, I'm just recording the crime scene." And we find out it's the other detective who's just like not engaging. He's just recording. And
Yeah, don't help, just film.
yeah, and the like uniform cops are like, "What do we do? Like, who's the perp? Like, what do we shoot?" As
I don't know which one to shoot.
Kenneth has Spawn just like wrapped up in tendrils hanging out the window, and he's like, "You know what? I'm gonna go with my instinct here. Direct your fire at the slimy thing with the tentacles," which you know
Yeah.
what, that usually is pretty
Honestly,
good.
if I had the choice between slimy tentacle guy and cape guy, I'd go for tentacle guy. I will say the art here is good. It is a little more standard, like superhero art from this time. It does make me miss the sort of dreamlike quality of the previous issue, especially with the psychic monster. But that said, it's still really good, and I like the continuity of Brian Haberlin.
The design's really, so I think I've realized in talking this through, it is definitely Brian Haberlin breakdowns with Van Dyke finishes in the last one, because the monster and, as you noted, Spawn are so consistent with Haberlin that it has to be that way. There's no way it's not. Good inking here too, especially Haberlin inking himself for part of it. So
yes, again, we've called out Steve Epting in his art before, but this really has that, like, though, especially we're well into the era of like solid inks, where we've moved on from the 90s style of like those weird hyper detailed, like there's a lot of black on these pages, lots of spotted black, and that is used to set the mood, which lets the colors be more subdued.
Well, the other thing I actually like about the transition from Van Dyke's sort of dreamier issue to this is that everything is kind of coming into focus. Like, we're starting to understand this a lot more. So it almost makes a little bit of sense that the art kind of follows suit. I'm no prizing
Yeah.
there a little bit, but
Yeah, well, it works fine. And
Yeah.
so Spawn is still fighting Kenneth. I still really like the art of the tentacle monster and everything. It's still good. The Haberling consistency makes it work. I love the panel. Okay, we get this page where Mammon's face appears in the mass of like psychic flesh and tentacles and says, "Come on, Simmons, you fought long and hard. You've saved the world. You've earned a rest. Give it up. Just let it all slip away." And God, I love this design for this creature. This is great.
Yeah,
this is exactly how like a psychic nightmare monster should look. And who should show up but Nyx stabbing him with a Bud K sword, stabbing Kenneth with another Bud K sword, holding it by the horns on the hilt. It's got these like big horns on the hilt, pressing it into him. And she's like, "I guess you haven't heard this Hellspawn has a partner now." Now, I just want to say, if I haven't said it before, if you own a decorative sword like this, especially like one of those Bud K specials,
send it to us.
Send it to us. No, but also never swing it or stab anything, because if she tried to do this, it would just break. That steel is like stainless steel. It will shatter in your hands, literally. The reason you don't have swords like this in history is because, first off, those giant curled horns, you'll catch something in there. And also, that makes all the weight so heavy right on the fulcrum. Anyway, this has been Sword Corner with Uncle George. And Mammon is like, "Oh, there's the real warrior," and he disappears, leaving Kenneth in control again. And Nyx is just like, "Oh crap!" She's holding this giant, like, ugly ass fucking like stepdad sword.
This arc is like unintentionally funny because this cuts directly to Spawn getting thrown out the window. Like he's falling. He's just like falling to his doom. And
the panel at the end of that page, though, where he's confronting Nyx, where he says, "You could have had a bright future ahead of you, or you could have a bright future ahead of you, provided you survive the next few minutes." And she's like cowering back with her sword, and he's like towering in on her. Looks great. And then, yes, the next panel is Spawn falling onto the ground right next to these cops. And the cop is like, "Wait a minute, you're the one who saved us from the apocalypse. Is that why you're here?" And Spawn into the camera goes, "Nyx." And Nyx calls out psychically to Mark. She says, "Mark, can you hear me? Take out your gun and do exactly what I tell you," which is a crazy thing for him to just be like, "Okay." It reminds me of that meme of the dude being like, "When I have to kill Tony Hawk in the race war," and it's the guy holding the gun crying, and Tony Hawk responds and says, "Hey, at least you're sad about it."
But basically, Nyx is telling Mark that he needs to pull out his gun and shoot Kenneth because the only way to stop the psychic projections is to kill him. And we've seen that Mark has not been too hesitant to use a gun in the past, but this feels cruel and unusual in a way that he's not completely comfortable with.
And I like that Kenneth is kind of changing a little bit. One thing that is interesting is that when he uses his powers, his hair turns white.
Mm-hmm.
Which
it was kind of like wispy and
it was wispy, but I just looked, it's brown and like dark, and then in that issue it gets lighter and whiter as he starts using his powers. It's just a cool touch. He's a cool villain. I will say he is basically this is a strong precursor to speaking of Peach Momoko, her Shadow
Ultimate
King
X-Men.
From Ultimate X-Men, where he's this sad nerd who sits in a closet, like sending out his psychic monster. No, again, they didn't invent that. I think maybe the Tempest did, and so it's an old trope, but it's cool. It's a cool reminiscent thing, and so Mark pulls out his gun and points it at him. And to his credit, again, he has that look of like, "Oh God, don't make me do this." And he says, "Stop whatever you're doing, wherever you've gone to, come back here right now, or I'll blow a hole in this bubble, and you know what that means. How long do you think you'll live once this filthy air starts choking up your lungs?" And the doctor says security to isolation. And he says, stop attacking Nyx and get back here right now or I will fire. The guards are running. He says they can't help you. All they're doing is speeding things up. We get this close up on his mouth going, I'm back. Meanwhile, we cut back to Nyx, and as she's fighting this creature about to be subsumed, it just disappears.
Yep.
Right as Al climbs up to the window.
Al has climbed up like an 8-story building on the outside, which we know he can do that, but like it is really funny.
I love this panel where he's coming up over the fucking window all covered in goo. And he's like, it was Mammon. Love that panel. And then he says, it's always Mammon.
This is what I mean. Like it is like we're laughing at it not because it's like bad. It's just funny. Like it is actually like we're watching like this arc feels a little bit inconsequential, right? Like it does feel like Monster of the Weeky. And we've got like Al Simmons quipping like he's Bruce Willis in a Die Hard movie, kind of.
Yeah.
Like, it's great.
It is great. You know, I also love, they teleport Nyx and Spawn. They don't really show it, but they teleport to the hospital where Kenneth is. And I love that Spawn is now like lit by these like fluorescent lights. In a way that he rarely is. He's still shadowy because that's just an inherent part of his like magical essence. But like, I like that you get the like scenes of his face and like the texture of his costume because of like the washed out color and everything. He says, Nyx, you could save us all a lot of trouble and hypnotize these guys. And she says a binding spell will be faster and basically just kind of freezes the guards
them
in their tracks. And
this is where like, what I was kind of talking about, where Hein is like, all right, I got to put some of the toothpaste back in the tube because that would be easier. Just hypnotize them and go on, move on. And also, why can't you just do that to Kenneth?
Yeah, well, I mean, Kenneth has powers, so we would assume, and Mammon gave her back her magic, so. As I believe it was Alice Walker said, the master's hands cannot take apart the master's house, which is a gross misuse of a very important quote.
So they get frozen and
I'm sorry, that was Audre Lorde. As Audre Lorde said, the master tools will never dismantle the master's house. I'm so sorry.
That's why voting doesn't work. Sorry to get political. Al says to Kenneth, like, Kenneth is being obstinate and he's saying, that was cute, but your magic tricks don't scare me. Al says, I'm not interested in you anymore. I want to talk to the one who's pulling your strings. I want to talk to Mammon. He's kind of trying to cut to the chase, which I appreciate. He's like, you don't matter. This doesn't matter. You can't kill me. I can probably kill you if I do it right. You're powered up by Mammon, though, so that's the trouble I'm having. And Kenneth
Mammon
is
just
angry.
shows up.
Yeah, Kenneth is angry because he's not finished, and Mammon shows up anyway. And
yeah, he says, Spawn says, if you don't, I know Mammon can communicate through you, and if he doesn't do that right now, I'm coming in there. I love Spawn pressed up against the glass. Yeah.
Awesome.
Again, we're just getting like Spawn in daylight. And it's like when Batman walks into a room with fluorescent lights. You kind of see too much of his costume and you're like, oh, there's just like seams. This guy's wearing underwear. Mark says, how do you get in there? And Mammon says, I go where I please. You should know that. And Mark recognizes him as Malefic. And Spawn says, whatever you want from me, you can stop using this kid. And Mammon is like, using him? He's been planning this killing spree his whole life. I've just empowered him. Yep. And he says something happened to him during the apocalypse that allowed him to live out his sick little fantasies, something that pestilence concocted. I simply taught him how to use that ability. As we remember, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse rode through Earth. It's interesting that the new source of some of Spawn's villains is now sort of that misalignment of, the rebuilding of reality.
And also the sort of like what they've left behind, right? It feels like the power left behind by this power that was on Earth, right? My thought is, and I guess follow me a little bit on this, but the only way that his air got contaminated was that pestilence passed through that building.
Yeah,
And like
exactly.
that is what has sort of mutated him and powered him up essentially.
Yep.
And I think that again, Hein doing like a really deft dancing between the raindrops here to kind of explain it without getting
Well, it's
too
a
in the
nice
weeds.
comic conceit.
Yeah. Oh, it's
You know,
great.
it just works easily. It's like
Yeah.
the Ultraverse, where almost all the superheroes got their abilities from, I think it was called the Spark, where they were all on this trolley, and or at least it was one super team. They were all on this trolley, and something happened, and superheroes and supervillains were born. Fucking
George,
great.
you're the biggest Ultraverse head I know.
I am quoted on the Ultraverse Wikipedia page.
Are you really?
Yes, absolutely. Because, well, first off, I am willing to ask the hard questions, and because I was one of the last people to ask Marvel about it, when I spoke to Cy Spurrier about the Black Knight limited series he did, I was like, listen, because we're talking about Dane Whitman, I have to ask you, Ultraverse. And he was just like, yeah, I can't even answer that, basically. But if you go to the Wikipedia page, I am quoted on the Ultraverse Wikipedia page. I'm actually quoted on a significant number of comic book Wikipedia pages, which is what happens when you work in the comic industry for 17 years.
I love that for you. I'm actually quoted on a few too.
I believe it. A lot of Best Shots people and Newsarama people are, because widely
Pat
read.
ourselves on the back a little bit.
So
anyway, Ultraverse aside, basically, yeah. So Pestilence had concocted some sort of powered up Kenneth here, and Mammon now is powering him up even further, which is why he's able to take on Spawn. You have something to say?
I was just thinking about how cool it would be to do Ultraverseography.
How much is there?
Probably a lot. I know a dude pretty well who worked at Malibu. He was an inker and one of the early digital colorists.
We'll talk about it off mic. Well, honestly, if a listener says we have to do it, we have to do it. So
you have to read every Ultraverse.
But I'm going to tell you this: you're editing that one.
Yeah,
because I already edit this one.
Speaking of which, we're getting a little long in the tooth.
Yeah.
Back in the fantasy world of Kenneth, the bubble monster. They go inside. Mammon is like, oh, good. It looks like Kenny is paying a visit to the last of the creators who beat him at the Tokyo Blast Awards, the very lovely Bud Hoser. Because Nyx is like, oh, God, he's doing it again. And they look over, and it's like if he was just jacking off in the corner or something. Oh, he's doing it again.
They spray him with a water bottle.
Yeah. No, Kenneth, no. Mango, down. Mango. He's basically, this is pretty problematic, I'll say. He has taken the form of a beautiful woman and is straddling this guy Bud in his bed. We see the horny art that he's drawn of this.
Yeah.
And she says, wake up, buddy. What do you think, buddy? Did I get the boobs right? Am I the girl of your filthy adolescent dreams? She uses a word I'm not going to use there.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's a podcaster word that I won't be saying. You can't take away our podcaster words. They took away our gamer words.
But we cut away from Bud Hoser and this woman.
She's not assaulting him. She's just sitting on top of
him. And she's in a thong, basically. And that's basically it. But right outside of his door are two police officers who are just watching over him because they were told they have to. And they're like, yeah, there's nothing going on. He's sleeping like a baby. I don't know. There's nothing happening. And they go to check on him and they just get a yarg coming from the room. What is that poster, you think, by the way?
That is Lara Croft Tomb Raider.
No, the one behind the detectives. It looks so familiar to me, and I just don't know what it is, but I know it's something.
It looks like it almost looks like Faster Pussycat Kill Kill, but it's not that. It definitely looks like a what do you call a Roger Corman or a one of those.
Yeah.
Anyway, this next page, these 4 panels, this is a very manga-esque sequence. This 4-panel sequence of Kenneth as this like haunted woman turning her head all the way around backwards. She's got like a fucking skull face, and she goes, "Bud's dead, baby. Bud's dead. Zed's
So
dead,
good.
baby.
Yeah, I was gonna
Zed's
say,
dead."
a little Pulp Fiction.
Yep. Eyes of Fire, Zed's dead.
Crazy splash of her hair of her tits.
That's her
becoming
titties.
becoming
like
tentacles.
tentacles. It's fucking awesome. That is some stupid weird shit. That is like some EC Comics fucking nightmare Haze Code, like fucking that okay. This really reminds me of Species.
Oh yeah.
A movie I saw
sure.
at 13 that I am thankful. I'm just glad it didn't have any effect on my brain or mind or anything about me. And so, yeah, she's just like draining the life out of him with her like weird tit vine tentacles. And it's not even sexualized, although she does say like, she says, if it makes you feel any better, I think he died happy. She says something explicit there, but I think that's like edgelord Kevin Smith type shit.
Yeah,
this is 100%. Not a very sexualized scene.
And so like now Spawn has failed twice, and he's now on top of the bubble.
Yeah,
this page is real weird. But
Mark says, "I'm going in," and Spawn says, "No, I'm going in." And Mark says, Mammon says, doesn't Kenneth deserve a fair trial? If either of you comes through that barrier, you'll kill Kenny. Any contact with bacteria. And Mark says he didn't seem to have any problem breathing the same air as you. And Mammon explains, I'm an angel, a fallen angel, but still an angel. Bacteriologically speaking, I'm as pure as driven snow.
Bacteriologically is a crazy word.
I love it. Bacteriologically speaking, fantastic. Great. English is a wonderful language. We get this close up on Spawn, and he says, Kenneth killed 5 people without showing a hint of remorse. Do you really imagine that I have a problem with him dying? And I love this. This is also a very manga ending. Like, there's just this weird twisted Twilight Zone quality of it that like great, a very Junji Ito kind of ending almost, where Kenneth says, Kenneth picks up the last of the trophies of the 4 people who beat him and puts it on the shelf. And he says, I've exposed the mediocrity of those second-rate hacks. The publishers will be fighting over my story. I've already signed the rights over to Dr. Sallow, the graphic novel, the biography, the TV and movie rights. He's going to be a rich man. And Spawn says, what are you doing? And he says, I'm coming out. I've had enough of this bubble. If I stay in here much longer, I think I'll just go crazy, which... Fair enough. And he starts coughing. He says, is this really this bad? You people really breathe this all the time? Or he says, this is really bad. You people breathe this all the time? And she says, Nyx says, stop right there, Kenneth. And he says, or what? I'm going outside just once in my life. I'd like to feel the sun on my face. And Spawn says, let him go, but not you, Mammon. He corners Mammon. And he says, what do you want from me? And Mammon says, from you? Nothing. This is such a devastating monologue. This is like the fucking monologue that it's the inverse of the monologue that fucking L Train gives Homelander in the final season of The Boys. Have you watched that?
I have not watched it yet, but I've heard it's great.
That's great. Where he just reads him for filth. He's like, from you, nothing. You don't have what it takes anymore. The anger is gone, the hate, the desire, all the things that made you a hellspawn. You're finished. All I want from you is to recognize that fact. And Mammon starts melting. This looks fucking great. And Spawn says, what is this? What's happening to you? And Mammon says, oh dear, I appear to be falling apart. And he explains that while it's his spirit, the body is actually a conjuration of Kenneth's psychic powers.
Yeah.
Again, this is so Akira to me. Kenneth is like the psychic kids.
Yep.
Oh,
And even
dear.
the frozen people in the background we see are blue, which is, I think, just like,
Mhm.
yeah, I know they're frozen, but it kind of keys you off to a similar type of
Mhm,
thing.
mhm. But then, Mammon melts away, and we get this scene where Kenneth goes outside and he goes, "It looks like a beautiful day." And he says, Mammon says, "In a few minutes, Kenneth will be dead, and what's left of his body will melt away into the ether. You know, you should take a leaf out of his book, show a little dignity, accept the truth." We get this sort of devastatingly beautiful sequence of Kenneth seeing the sun, seeing birds flying, and then shedding a single tear as he dies. And Mammon says, he knows his time is over. And uh,
We cut
Al is
back
left
to
there.
Yeah, we cut back to Spawn, and he's just got the melted remains of Mammon, and Nyx is trying to appeal to him, and he says, "He's right, Nyx. Everything I touch turns rotten. The world doesn't need me anymore. It's time for me to die."
And that's not foreshadowing anything in the story of Spawn. And there we have it. We've come to the end of this week's two-parter. And Pierce, I
I feel
understand.
like we were maybe a little low on it, but we ended up.
As we often do, I will say the biggest issue I had with it remains, which is the pacing. We'll go ahead and get into final thoughts real quick, because
Sure.
I think that's my biggest takeaway from it is I wish that first issue had a little tighter focus, because again, there are parts throughout both issues where it's like, I think this is what happened. We didn't really get the one panel we needed to explain this transition. But revisiting it, the art was so engaging and so gorgeous to dig into. That's what often does it for us. And again, Brian Haberlin, pretty high on my list of Spawn artists. Like, you're not going to go above, Todd and Capullo necessarily, but I would say in terms of this era of Spawn, he's doing great fucking work.
Might slide into number 3 with a few more issues, to be honest.
I think he's there for me. I mean, we don't have that many other artists to really draw on in terms of like long runs, but I think he really does some great work in this. And I think it comes back to the idea that he's been on Spawn long enough that he knows what he wants it to be and knows how to get there.
And I think he's probably colored a bunch of stuff that doesn't work.
Absolutely.
And has gone, oh, I'm going to make sure I don't do that.
Mhm.
He's also been allowed to kind of create his own vision of Spawn in a way. His Spawn looks so much different than the Spawns that we've gotten before. Now,
Yeah.
partly the story necessitates that, but I think that he's really been allowed to make his mark. And no
Yeah.
pun intended, I guess, for Al's brother. But, you know, and I think it's really fun seeing him paired with somebody like Van Dyke, who has a very different style, but with
It works
the
so well between them.
confines of Haberlin's breakdowns, we're seeing this like really cool collaboration. I kind of wish, I hope we get to see more. I feel like we won't, but I think it would be interesting to see more.
Well, I can find out if there's any more in this.
I like this arc. It's not perfect, but it is kind of moving the plot forward while giving us that little monster of the week feel. And that is something that's like a gear that the Spawn book has not gotten into since the very early days, when everything we were doing was like introducing a new thing. And so I wish Kenneth would come back, but also I get it, he serves a purpose here, and it is to teach Al that maybe death is something that he should want. And I think that's really interesting.
Now, I'm not sure if this is 100% accurate, but looking in the Spawn Compendium Volume 4 credits, the issue, the breakdown says art on that issue is by Gerard Van Dyke, inks by Brian Haberlin, colors by Ian Hannon. On some.
That's
of those.
interesting, because I feel like that might be an error. Is that for 177 or 176?
176. It doesn't say.
Yeah, I it's fine.
Interesting. I thought it did. Well, whatever.
Well, we also have a bit of thanks to our friend Mark Novak, aka Tiny
Again,
Spawny.
Tiny
Let's
Spawny,
talk
take a
Spawn.
listen.
Yep.
Check out his show on YouTube, Another Early Rec.
Mm-hmm. An every week rec. We're actually recommending. We'll always have a link to the Let's Talk Spawn and Regarding Spawn in our show notes
Because they're part
because
of
if
the
you
Spawn community.
community. So we do have a spawning ground thanks to a scan from Mark from 176. There's not a spawning ground in 177. That is not just fan art. But it says, "Hi all, Brian Haberlin here, and I'm busting with secrets. Haunt, but I can't talk about Haunt yet. But I've seen pages and they're cool. But I can't talk about yet, or Todd and Robert will
I
kill
remember
me.
Haunt.
And Spawn, let me tell you about what's coming up for Spawn. No, I can't do that either, or David and Todd and a mysterious other would kill me. I'm going to explode. Okay, all I can say is stay tuned as big things are coming down the pike at Todd McFarlane Productions. Now on to mail. Yeah, the Haunt book that Robert Kirkman did would be launching right around this time.
Yep.
And it says, first letter says, this will sound cliche, but I've collected Spawn since its very first issue, number 1, and I want to say thank you to everyone who has contributed to this great comic over the years. From the very beginning to the present, this has been a consistent, quality comic book. Easily the very best ongoing Image title, as well as what should be the industry's blueprint for the standard norm. Spawn continuously exceeds my monthly expectations, and I never get bored of this book. The stories are great, the artwork is always outstanding, coloring just brilliant, and the paper quality this book is printed on, don't change it. Overall, this book is the finest comic being put out today, and I'm one Spawn fan who looks forward to it being around to the end. One last thing, please always keep your fan page, Spawning Ground, because every comic fan dreams of one day being featured in the back of their favorite hero's book, and I absolutely love Spawn.
Well, you love to hear it.
That is from Christopher McDaniel. And the response from Brian Haberlin, who's in charge of this Spawning Ground, is Christopher, thanks for the kind words. All involved with the Spawn book really do their beyond the Call of Duty best each and every month. It's nice to see all the hard work is appreciated. And I may hijack the letters page from time to time, but we'll never give it up. Thanks for reading, Brian Haberlin. Well, and the second one says, Dear Spawn, this is an unusual issue. I enjoyed the Wild Wild West flav to the story. It still echoes in my mind from the words of Spawn. Can't kill a corpse, but this corpse can kill you. That's some pretty heavy-duty stuff, not since Clint Eastwood in High Plains Drifter. What the heck happened to Kemper? Man, that was a dynamite scene with Kemper. Like always, Spawn kept me right on the edge of my seat. Paul Dale Roberts. And
what the hell happened to Kemper? Man, that was a dynamite scene with Kemper. Where's Kemper? When Kemper's not on the page, everybody should be asking, where's Kemper?
Paul, can you believe that people groaned when we said we were going to be doing a Gunslinger Spawn story? They said no one will buy that, but I hear it was sold out almost everywhere, and I've heard from a lot of people talking. I've heard a lot of people talking about it as well. I think all did a great job on these 2 issues. Even one of my friends from the entertainment industry was saying that should be the next Spawn movie. Would be a heck of a movie. Thanks for writing, Brian Haberlin. Haberlin's approach to letter responses, not as pithy as Todd has been in the past, but
Todd has the gift of gab.
True.
And he has a point of view and he knows how to get it out there. So
Haberlin's just having some fun here.
It's interesting that we've come around generationally from the people who grew up reading Spawn and stopped liking what it was to the people who grew up reading that version of Spawn. That they, it's like, in a way, it's almost like Ninja Turtles. There's this adage that part of the reason Ninja Turtles in particular has never really stopped being popular because every 3 to 4 years they reboot it and bring in another audience of kids.
Yeah. Well, and now in our current era, it is such a nostalgia driven franchise in the sense that there's always something new, but there's always something old reminding you of the thing you loved when you were 6 years old. So
I think the Mutant Mayhem stuff splits the difference pretty well. Did we talk about this recently, or did I have this conversation with someone else where
love it?
Well, they made a good decision where, like, okay, everything now is geared towards the nostalgia of the parents of these fucking kids.
Yeah.
He-Man, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, everything. They're like, we're doing it the way it was when you were a kid. And like, I can't lie. I'm 43 years old. I'm excited for the shit that made me excited when I was 8 years old. I can't turn that off, and neither will our today's
I'm seeing He-Man in 4DX.
Oh, brother, is that a wet movie? When is that coming out?
It will be.
Is that July? I should, honestly. Anyway, so, but Ninja Turtles managed to escape that a little bit by doing Mutant Mayhem, and it's not just nostalgia callbacks. It's like all these colorful characters, and they just got teenagers, like real young people, to voice the Ninja Turtles. In a voice that kids recognize.
And to influence the script. Like a lot of them talk about how they're like, oh, we would say this. And Seth Rogen being like, yeah, okay, yeah. Put it in the movie.
Great. Oh, whatever Seth Rogen sounds like. Anyway, yeah, so there you go. And Spawn, Todd talked about that again. We always refer to that because Todd is no more authority than Todd McFarlane on Spawn. So, but in that way, what I was going to say is he's talked about it evolving. It's that same thing of like, you can't just do the same story over and over. You can't just do the same thing.
Yeah. And I think that this story, to sort of circle back to the two issues we covered, is them trying to be like, and we know Hein is kind of a Hollywood writer, entertainment, more kind of larger entertainment, but in general, has done a lot of comics, but like has a different sort of take on things. And is looking for the ways to move Spawn in a direction that aligns with what current pop culture is kind of doing. And I think that, this feels less like, I guess he's almost pushing it in a more TV show sort of pacing, which I think can be weird sometimes. It does feel like this arc wanted one more issue and they just didn't get it. But,
I don't know if I would have liked it if it went on that much longer.
I agree. I think but here's the thing. I think that that's right. I think that the weirdness between switching art in the middle kind of probably hurt it a little bit. Maybe it was rushed. Who knows? I kind of actually have a feeling that the first issue was slow because of the nature of the art. So the second issue ended up being a little bit rushed. Because I think Haberlin's been better about pacing in the past. Mm-hmm. So, but I think Hein was trying to get a lot across.
No one's immune to hiccups.
Yeah, but I think that Hein has pushed the book in a different direction because I think his sensibility is just different than Todd's. And I think that on some level, we are experiencing maybe Todd realizing like, I don't really know where to take this thing. I know it can go somewhere, but how can it expand? And now we've gotten a Mandarin Spawn story and a Gunslinger Spawn story. And we've gotten the idea that there is just so much more out there that has widened the cosmology of the book. And I think that that's really interesting. And I think that that's what happens when you put new voices on a book, typically. I think that the sort of, I don't mean this the way that it'll sound, but the sort of dancing between raindrops, like Dan Slott, like, do you remember this one panel from 1967? I'm going to write.
I mean, that's the entire Clone Saga. There was 2 years of Spider-Man comics that was basically that from like a dozen creators. Yeah.
But I think that like, you can do that. This at least is going backwards to go forward and just expanding back because we didn't get a lot of those details. And I think that ends up being pretty satisfying. Kenneth ends up being kind of a one-off villain here in a weird way.
That's okay though.
Like you said, it is kind of a tragic ending for somebody else who ends up getting manipulated by Mammon, right?
Thing is, he's a psychic being, so you never know.
Right. I mean, we've seen those come back before. Mm-hmm. So
Billy Kincaid is kind of the like prime example of that. Didn't he just come back too?
Yeah, he's always coming back.
Dude, I saw the art from his most recent return though, and it was fucking crazy. Looked
Yeah.
awesome. He was just like
Hey,
floating
listen.
guts and shit.
Listen, Spawn book's always at the forefront of really fucking cool visuals. So, you know, you
Yes.
can really never knock him for that. Anyway, George, before we go, you have any recommendations for our listeners this week?
I absolutely do. You know, April 2026 has been an interesting month, but one of the things that's cool about it is just this week, we had the 50th anniversary of the release of the first Ramones album. And also just a couple weeks before that, the 25th anniversary of the death of Joey Ramone, the best to
R.I.P.
ever do it. R.I.P. to the greatest. Listen, the Ramones are the best rock and roll band of all time. I will take no questions and brook no arguments on this. My recommendation is go listen to the first Ramones album. Just listen to the Ramones. If you listen to it and keep in mind that this was 1977 or 1976 rather, every song feels like it's going to spin off into a new genre of punk and did.
Mm-hmm.
And also, it's like Pet Sounds in that way, where every song feels like it's going to be something. And also, it's like a classic. If you listen to it, it's like a doo-wop record. It's a fucking... The Ramones just strip everything back to its essence. They recorded that album in like 2 days. Go listen to it. Engage yourself in the most perfect and primal version of rock and roll that exists. And appreciate the fact that Joey Ramone was God's saint on earth, even though he was Jewish.
I love that. I love the Ramones as a Queens native. I have to.
Say,
they actually
Queens,
when you live here, they force you to love the Ramones.
Yeah.
But I've always loved them, and I love.
You leave the hospital wrapped in a Ramones shirt.
Actually, a leather jacket.
Yeah.
Also, what's weird is my favorite Ramones song though is from Too Tough to Die, and it's Howling at the Moon. And that record
one of the
is
best songs
insane.
of all
I mean,
time.
that song fucking rules.
Hell yeah, it is.
I took the low and I threw it away because there's nothing wrong.
It's just for play. Johnny hated
There's no
that song.
no law anymore.
I won't steal from the rich and give to the poor. Na 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 na.
True words.
Great
That's
song.
my recommendation.
Great
My
video.
recommendation is another Ramones recommendation. It is listen to 1984's Too Tough to Die.
Do it. Fuck yeah.
That shit rules. It is, I think it's produced by Phil Spector.
Yes.
So it does sound insane.
I don't know if hold on a second. That might actually be.
Maybe not the whole record.
Well, he did do a record with them, and it's like it's End of the Century was the one that he did.
That's what it was. So. Yeah, sorry.
That is a wild record to listen to, knowing that Johnny Ramone, who barely did 2 takes in his fucking life, Phil Spector held a gun to his fucking head and made him play the same chord over and over for fucking like 6 hours because Phil Spector was legitimately insane. Anyway,
the weirdest thing about Too Tough to Die is that it is the first. So also, hold on. We keep saying that the Ramones, like, oh yeah, you know, their first record, really important. How many records do you think they put out between?
It's like 15 or something like that. 11.
I mean, but no, their first record is 1976. Their 8th studio album is in 1984. They were just like pumping them out like one or two a year. It's crazy. They
couldn't slow down. Well, the story of them recording their first album is that they showed up, the producer showed up or whatever, and was like, "How's it going?" And Johnny was like, "Not so great. We've only done 8 songs."
Anyway, the Ramones, one of the greatest to ever do it.
Yeah.
And yeah, Howlin' at the Moon, Sha-La-La, one of my favorite songs of all time.
One of the best.
Anyway, thank you so much for listening. If you like the show, please rate, review, subscribe wherever you're listening to podcasts. It really helps the show out. George and I are planning some things for the second half of this year. Maybe some Patreon things. If there's things that you'd like to hear us talk about, that you might pay some money for, shoot us an
Or you
email.
want to engage deeper in the Spawn community? We'll figure it out. We're lurking on that. I mean,
we're thinking about
I
ideas.
just told you I lost my job, so I'll be out here begging in the streets pretty soon.
Well, you're a professional podcaster now.
Oh God,
You've pivoted to the manosphere.
Oh, wow. They're going to love me.
Oh, you froze. You're back.
I said
You're
they're
back.
going to
You're
love
back.
me.
Anyway, thank you all so much for listening. And George, before we go, for God so loved the world,
He gave his only begotten Spawn.
See you later, Hellspawn. Spawnography is recorded in Athens, Georgia, and Queens, New York. It's produced by me, Pierce Lyden. Our theme music and logo were composed by George Marston. Episodes come out every Monday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. If you like the show, please rate, review, subscribe. You can find us on social media at Spawnography or at SpawnographyPod. If you'd like to reach out to us directly, you can do so at spawnographypod@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and until next time, see you later, Hellspawn.